Secret Weapons, and today we're taking a look at the Nova Go Sonic. I try not to be overly precious or selective with the kind of gear we cover on this channel. We cover the gamut of pretty high-end, expensive, boutique-y stuff all the way down through kind of middle of the road and very affordable gear. And we'll touch on affordable gear regardless of whether or not the affordability is an intentional selling point of the product or if it just happens to also be very affordable. My policy is kind of, if it sounds good or has a great use case, we will cover it. If I think it's worth knowing about, we will talk about it. And to that end, we are talking about one of the strangest things I've ever covered on this channel, the Nova Go Sonic by Enya Music. This is a carbon fiber electric guitar with a built-in speaker, a built-in effects chain and amplifier, USB, Bluetooth, a headphone jack, and for some reason a 0 fret. So let's get into what this guitar is, where its positives are and where its drawbacks are, because it has all of these things. Let's start with a broad overview of the guitar itself. You have an all carbon fiber guitar. We're talking carbon fiber fretboard as well as carbon fiber neck and body. You have a full kind of scale guitar. This is not a travel guitar. This is a proper electric guitar, despite being very thin in carbon fiber, which makes it only about 6 pounds and consistent from copy to copy because it's not made from wood and has no strong deviation as a result. There are a couple kind of funny consequences of it being all carbon fiber, especially the kind of neck and fretboard, which is there is a 0 fret on this guitar, which I think can be a somewhat polarizing feature. And for me, I am not a fan of the 0 fret, but I understand its inclusion on this guitar because the nut itself also appears to be made from the same carbon fiber as the rest of the instrument. So having a 0 fret just kind of gives you back a little bit more of that guitar feel. But if you're somebody who doesn't like the 0 fret idea and doesn't gel with it, that's a good buyer beware right off the jump, because I'm not sure it's a mod that you could make to this guitar versus almost everything else that you probably can kind of fix up to varying extents. The tuners themselves are another one of those touch points. They are non-locking tuners that hold their own fine for what this guitar is and what the price point it comes in at. I don't find that it's a great kind of like beacon of tuning stability, but I do find that it holds up pretty well in the recording process. I'm not finding myself constantly killing takes to kind of have to retune the guitar. It's more of your kind of slightly above average check-in when playing. The neck itself is an asymmetrical C shape. It's carbon fiber with a satin finish, and it's surprisingly comfortable as far as a guitar like this goes. I find it to be relatively quick, easy to get around, and that satin finish means that there is no kind of poly stickiness to it, which feels like it would compound poorly with the carbon fiber, but the satin finish on the carbon fiber neck actually makes it a surprisingly comfortable play. The body itself kind of pulls from that Les Paul lineage, but I would describe it as much closer to something like the old ESP LTD style single cuts. If you remember those, slightly sharper and more modern in a few ways, but with a much thinner body than most things you've played. Like I said, carbon fiber and a very thin kind of form factor means that this is a very light guitar, which is quite nice, especially considering it's something that also has a speaker and a whole system built into it. And to that end, one of the most bizarre things about this guitar is the inclusion of that speaker system. You have a speaker on the front of this guitar, and I would describe it as exclusively useful for kicking around on the couch or kind of like on the go practicing and playing. It is not an overly loud speaker, and despite it not being super loud, it also is prone to kind of limitations and crackle really quickly, not a very three-dimensional sound, and very prone to feeding back into itself with any amount of volume or gain applied to it, as you are about to hear right now. Okay, Mark from the future here. I finished editing the video and reached out to Enya about the speaker feedback issue, and they said that they are in fact working on a firmware update for the guitar to kind of help address that and prevent the kind of like in the room feedback. Apparently the reason it does that is because the output is tailored to be really high for kind of like busking musicians and people who would plug this guitar straight into a PA system that maybe doesn't have great built-in preamps, but they are working on a fix for people using the speakers specifically. So that fix does not currently exist. So as always, don't make purchasing decisions based on promised updates to a device, but just know that that is supposed to be on their roadmap. But it's not exclusive to those high gain moments. Anyways, it's even clean stuff turned all the way up will still elicit some very similar experiences. So there's definitely going to be a like kind of know your volume limitations when you are kind of kicking around the house with this as an all-in-one, because you will get that feedback thing relatively easily. The pickups themselves are humbuckers that can be coil tapped using the volume control. It's basically just a volume and a coil tap and a three-way selector, and any additional kind of tonal changes you want to make need to be done in the app on a rig by rig basis. And as you can see, this guitar has another interesting kind of quirk on the face of it, which is that silver button. Press and hold that to turn on the rig system. Otherwise, it functions as a totally normal electric guitar. Once you turn that on, it will run out of the speaker, over the USB, or out of the 1/4-inch jack, depending on what you have plugged into it. And for the entirety of that intro track, we used a blend of the Enya Nova Go Sonic as a standalone guitar by itself, like a proper electric, running into neural DSP plugins to get a lot of the tones you heard on that intro track. We also used it in a few different instances, plugged it directly into the guitar, directly into my high-Z input, straight into my DAW, running the rigs built inside of the guitar itself, fine-tuned with the iOS app that kind of bundles with the guitar. With the one notable exception, if you were watching the intro track, where we actually do mic up that little speaker on the guitar. That was more just for the fun of it than anything else. I would never actually, or I can't envision myself really tracking a whole proper song like that, so much as I can see it being kind of a fun, lo-fi quirk for soft interludes in a song the way we used it. So this is a lightweight, thin, all carbon fiber guitar with a speaker, an iOS app with a decent amount of variance in it. You're not going to get like a proper signal chain out of it. You will get an amplifier, a post-amp EQ system, a single effect insert for modulation, tremolo, chorus, and vibrato, as well as a single delay. There's no different versions of that delay. You just have a delay and a reverb. So simple signal chain, relatively rock solid guitar, decent electronics. But here's the kicker of all this stuff. This is a $400 guitar. And if you haven't Googled this before, if you haven't looked into it, it may seem like I just buried the lead on that. And that is the thing, is this is a really affordable thing, in my opinion, for what it contains, and more importantly, for how well it actually plays. I've played very few guitars in my life at this price point that I feel like are competently put together, especially in this era where even like the Squiers of the world have kind of outpaced the $400 price point for their better builds and everything. I think something like this coming at this price point actually makes it a really interesting kind of secondary guitar, or if you know you're going to be traveling and you want something that you can kind of kick around with and not bring anything else. This thing can be charged over USB. You don't need anything else if you just want to sit down and play some electric guitar and just kind of not worry about the grander context you are doing it in. So there is an affiliate link in the description down below if you want to check one of these out or pick one of these up. That will of course help out the channel, help me out if you kind of use my affiliate code down below. So I'm being very, very kind of forthright about that. You can go check them out on Amazon or directly on their website or whatever else you want to. But if my video here is helpful in kind of pointing you towards this guitar, yeah, that affiliate link would actually really help me out. So yeah, let's get into some sound samples. We're going to start off by taking a look at the Enya it as a proper electric guitar. So the electronics in it are bypassed. We are plugging into my pedal board down on the ground next to me with the 1981 Inventions LVL, the new Origin Kelly 76 FET compressor, and a handful of other pieces of gear. And we're going to send it into a Matchless Chieftain, because if this thing is a real guitar, as we claim it is, let's put it through a real proper rig. So let's give it a listen now. Okay, so we've heard kind of how these pickups operate into a proper amplifier and everything. We are now going to unplug from that setup, plug it directly into the High-Z input on my Apollo interface, turn on the app and the software, and run through a couple rigs in the guitar itself. We're gonna set up basically a nice, easy, clean tone, play with some effects there, move it into a kind of like more like distortion-y range, kind of like low gain rhythm guitar kind of thing, and then finally into more of a high gain riffy kind of sound. And it's worth noting here that on that intro track, the clean guitar on the verse section with that tremolo is the built-in effects on this guitar. That is direct in Enya sounds, as well as a lot of the doubled rhythms for heavier portions of that song. That's all the kind of higher gain amp settings in this guitar itself, doubled with something like the Neural DSP Pliny X. So yeah, let's give the Nova Go Sonic's built-in stuff a listen now. So what is my verdict on the Nova Go Sonic? It's not always that we kind of like circle back up and share our opinions and that kind of thing on these products. I tend to like to just put something out there and let the sound speak for itself, and you can kind of decide whether or not it's right for you based on that. But with something like a guitar, I think it's important to kind of share some additional conclusive thoughts on it, because the act of holding a guitar is a much different experience than the act of hearing a guitar pedal. The Nova Go Sonic is pretty good when you don't factor in the price point. The electronics in it are not anything to write home about. The effects are fine, but I do find the amps to actually sound pretty decent, if not super convincing. I think there is room in the current context for guitar amps in a digital environment that don't sound like a real amp, but still sound cool. And I think that this does that pretty well. And I think it actually does track into a mix shockingly well, which I found to be really satisfying. The speaker is not great. The neck is really comfortable, but I don't like that 0 fret. But at $400, give or take, on Amazon or directly through Enya, I think it might be something I can recommend to the right person. This is not a guitar for everybody, but if you are somebody who is looking for something that they can throw in the back of their car on a road trip, or that they can fly with, and then if something happens to it, it's not the end of the world, this is a really compelling way to get to take some kind of kick around electric guitar with you on the road, or sitting out in the living room with your kid, whatever kind of like low stakes guitar playing you want to be doing. So, and it doubles as a real guitar, which is quite nice. So once again, if you like what you heard in this video and you actually want to check one of these out, I have an affiliate link in the description down below. If you're new around here, I would love it if you would subscribe, hit the like button, do all the things that kind of help feed the algorithm in that way that allows me to keep doing this at bigger and better levels moving forward. And outside of that, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.